cluster of weeds pushing through a crack in the concrete. Just a sign. Think about the last puddle you stepped over on your way to work. Or, running errands. You probably just saw it as a minor inconvenience. An obstacle to keeping your shoes clean. Or maybe like a cluster of weeds pushing through a crack in the concrete.
Just a sign the city needs to do some maintenance, right?
Exactly. Just background noise. But according to the sources we're diving into today, that puddle or that weed might actually be the biological reset button your nervous system is desperately looking for.
It really is a total paradigm shift in how we interact with our environment, because we tend to treat the natural world as just a static backdrop to our very busy lives.
Yeah, totally.
Like, we know intellectually that nature is relaxing, but we overlook the mechanics of why. And the material we're analyzing today moves far past this idea of just taking a nice walk to blow off steam.
Right, so we're looking at a set of writings called The Intelligence of Natural Patterns, a guide to presence. And the mission of this deep dive is to explore how observing specific, simple, natural geometries like leaves, water, the sky, even insects, acts as a direct neurological hack to shift our brains out of analytical overdrive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I initially assumed this was going to be another lecture on sitting perfectly still on a meditation cushion while trying to banish all your thoughts.
Right, the usual mindfulness pitch.
Yeah, but this is framed as learning to see again, which sounds so much more dynamic.
It is, and
Oh,
the
yeah.
operative word throughout the guide is intelligence.
Okay.
The core thesis argues that there is a profound recognizable intelligence embedded in the rhythm and the repetition of the natural world. By actively decoding these physical patterns, things like spirals, fluid dynamics, symmetry, we actually physically alter our brain state.
Wow.
We're essentially giving our neurobiology a blueprint for how to operate without chronic friction.
And what I love is the guide is clear that you don't need some pristine, untouched wilderness for this to work,
No, not at all.
A balcony plant, a roadside tree, or that puddle we mentioned earlier works perfectly.
Yeah.
But, and here's the thing, there is one foundational rule for the preparation phase, and I actually want to push back on it right away.
Okay, let's hear it.
The rule is carry no agenda and absolutely do not take any photos. Experience first, capture later.
Yes, the no photo rule.
Right. And, we outsource so much of our memory to our camera rolls now. If I see an incredibly intricate leaf, snapping a photo feels like I'm, honoring how beautiful it is. Why would capturing it ruin the practice?
What's fascinating here is what taking a photograph actually does to your cognitive state.
Okay.
When you pull out your phone, you are engaging a very specific neural pathway. You frame the shot, you assess the lighting, maybe you think about how it's going to look on a screen.
Yeah, or who I'm going to text it to.
Yeah, exactly. And then you save it to a folder. You are managing an asset. In cognitive science, you're operating heavily out of the default mode network.
Wait, the default mode network?
Yeah, it's the part of the brain associated with rumination, ego, and projecting into the past or future.
Oh, wow. So by trying to capture the moment, I'm actually booting up the project manager in my brain.
Precisely.
Which is the exact system I'm trying to quiet down.
You're maintaining a state of acquisition rather than observation. Nature evolves and grows without rushing, and this practice is about syncing with that rhythm.
Right.
Step 1 requires pausing, taking a single slow breath, and asking the question, what patterns are quietly repeating around me? The moment you look through a camera lens, you are no longer asking what's repeating around you.
You're asking what you can extract from the environment.
Exactly. It completely changes the dynamic.
What patterns are quietly repeating around me? Just asking that question shifts the entire flavor of a walk.
It does.
It moves us from the cognitive act of stopping into the first practical element the guide asks us to decode, which is leaves. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, this part is great.
We treat leaves like generic green wallpaper, but the text asks us to zoom in on the vein structures, the color gradients, the repeating geometric shapes.
Because the guide is implicitly directing us toward observing fractals.
Fractals, right?
Yeah, fractals are these complex patterns where each part has the same statistical character as the whole. Think of how the veins of a leaf mimic the branches of the tree,
Oh, sure.
which mimic the root system. And from a biological standpoint, human beings evolve surrounded by these specific natural geometries.
That makes sense.
Because our visual cortex is so adapted to them, processing natural fractals requires incredibly low metabolic energy. It basically creates a state of visual fluency.
Visual fluency. I love that. And it makes total sense because processing the hard right angles and like stark lines of a modern urban environment is actually work for our brains.
Exactly, it's taxing.
Whereas looking at a leaf is like speaking our native visual language.
And that visual fluency triggers a physiological response. Studies have actually shown that simply looking at natural fractal patterns significantly lowers cortisol levels.
Really? Just looking at them.
Just looking at them reduces physiological stress. You aren't just looking at something pretty, you are feeding your visual cortex the exact geometry it evolved to process effortlessly.
That is wild. And the guide pairs that biological reality with a reflection prompt for the leaf. It asks, how can something be similar yet unique? Because no two leaves are fully identical. You have this underlying mathematical archetype, but the individual expression is infinite.
Which is a profound departure from how modern society structures success.
Oh, for sure. Everything's so standard.
Exactly. Now, from the structural rigidity of the leaf, the guide seamlessly transitions us to fluid dynamics. The next element to observe is water.
Puddles, streams, whatever.
Right. Ripples, reflections, changing light. And crucially, how water flows around obstacles.
Yes. The insight drawn from the water observation in the text journaling section really stuck with me. It says, resistance creates tension.
Yes.
We're prompted to ask what water teaches us about adaptability. Because usually, when you and I encounter a rock in our path, like a career setback or a difficult person, our instinct is to try and smash the rock.
Right, we just apply blunt force.
Exactly.
But water offers a completely different physical model for problem solving. When flowing water meets a rock in a stream, it doesn't fight the solid object.
This goes around it.
It takes the path of least resistance, and it often utilizes the obstacle's own physical presence to create an eddy or a new current, conserving its forward momentum.
And what's wild is that over a long enough timeline, the water's approach is actually more destructive to the obstacle than blunt force.
Exactly.
I mean, the softness of the water, aided by gravity and persistence, eventually carves the rock away. It reshapes the Grand Canyon.
Right.
It's not just passive acceptance. It's a completely different mechanism for overcoming an obstacle.
That is the crucial distinction. We often equate adaptability with weakness or surrender. But the fluid dynamics of water demonstrate that adaptability is an incredibly efficient use of energy.
Totally.
The guide reinforces this with another journal example about the leaf structure. It says, a spiral leaf pattern means growth is not linear.
Oh, yeah. We always expect our personal development to be like a straight line on a graph.
Right, straight up. But nature demonstrates that sustainable growth circles back on itself. It spirals. It revisits old points from a higher vantage point.
Okay, so if observing the fractal geometry of a leaf calms our visual cortex,
Right.
and observing water gives us a physical model for bypassing resistance, what happens when the obstacle isn't external but internal? Like a massive wave of anxiety.
That's the perfect question.
This is where the guide structure is really clever, because it dictates a drastic shift in our scale of observation. We move from the tangible, micro level, all the way up to the vastness of the macro, the sky.
It is a deliberate recalibration of perspective to trigger psychological distancing. The guide instructs you to notice cloud formations, the transitions between light and shadow.
And just the sheer openness above you.
Yes.
The reflection prompt here is, what inside me needs more openness? And I notice this myself. When I'm stressed, my physical gaze drops.
Right. You look down.
Yeah, I'm staring at a screen or looking down at the sidewalk. My visual field gets incredibly narrow, and my mental state mimics that exact constraint.
Exactly.
Tipping your head back and looking at the sky actually breaks that physical posture.
And there's a neurological basis for that relief. When you're in a state of high stress, your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response, engages foveal vision.
Foveal vision.
Yes, tunnel vision. It's designed to help you focus on the immediate threat. But by intentionally looking up at the sky and widening your gaze to take in the horizon, you're engaging panoramic vision. This physical action signals to your brainstem that there are no immediate predators, which actively downregulates the sympathetic nervous system and engages the parasympathetic resting state.
So looking at the sky is literally telling your brainstem that you're safe.
Literally.
That's amazing. And the metaphor the text provides here is so visceral. It says, cloud shifting implies that emotions also pass.
Right.
A storm can roll in, looking violently dark and permanent, but an hour later it breaks. And the key is that the sky itself isn't damaged by the storm. It just holds the weather and lets it move on.
It provides a baseline of permanence while acknowledging temporary turbulence.
I love that.
But then, to prevent you from just getting lost in the clouds, the guide pulls your attention all the way back down to the ground.
Right.
It asks you to observe the minuscule. Insects, ants, beetles, a spider weaving a web.
Watching insect navigation is fascinating when you compare it to our own daily grind. We've built an entire culture around the concept of the hustle,
Oh, absolutely. The grind set.
Is relentless persistence without any breaks. But the text specifically highlights the pauses of insects. If you watch an ant navigate a complex sidewalk, it scrambles frantically, but then it stops completely.
It just freezes.
Yeah, it just pauses.
So what can we learn from the rhythm of something that operates entirely on biological instinct?
Well, the pause isn't a failure of momentum.
Right.
The ant stops to recalibrate its chemical trail.
Yeah.
To figure out where it is relative to the colony, it uses the pause to reorient. Meanwhile, we humans just keep running blind because we feel guilty if we aren't constantly productive.
We do. We treat a pause as a moral failing rather than a navigational necessity.
Yes.
It is a brilliant observation. The prompt for this section asks, what intelligence exists in small, unnoticed things?
The pause is the intelligence.
Exactly. Without it, the insect expends energy in the wrong direction. By observing that rhythm, we are visually reminded that biological efficiency actually requires periods of absolute stillness to assess direction.
But observation alone isn't enough, which is where the guide pivots from theory into integration.
Right, application.
Because it's very easy to feel enlightened while staring at a cloud, but it's incredibly difficult to maintain that state when your inbox has, like, 90 unread emails.
True.
So to bridge that gap, the text introduces the pattern awareness journal and something called the silent awareness practice.
So the journaling exercise demands synthesis. You are asked to write down 5 specific patterns you observed, what drew your attention, and what it mirrored about your own life.
It forces you to actually articulate the visual data into conscious insight.
Exactly.
And the deeper reflection questions pull no punches.
Yeah.
It asks where you're resisting natural flow. But my absolute favorite question in the entire text is, what does nature do effortlessly that humans complicate?
It's a great question. Because if you take an honest inventory of human behavior, we complicate nearly every natural process.
Oh, for sure.
We complicate growth through constant comparison. We complicate problem solving by forcing square pegs into round holes.
We complicate rest by attaching tremendous shame to it.
Exactly.
But right before you answer those questions, the guide drops what I consider the most difficult challenge of the whole practice.
The silent awareness practice.
Yes. 2 minutes of observing a natural element completely without labeling it.
Right.
No analysis, no naming the color or the species. Just witness the shape, the rhythm, and the stillness. I'll be honest, this feels almost impossible.
It's very hard.
Like if I look at a tree and spot a red leaf, my brain instantly screams, "Red leaf! Maple! Autumn is coming!" How do we actually silence that analytical voice?
The difficulty of the exercise reveals exactly why it is so crucial.
Okay.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of cognitive science, the human brain is basically a prediction machine.
Right.
Evolutionarily, we label our environment to survive. We categorize threats and resources. The brain wants to quickly identify an object, tag it as safe or food or danger, and then move on to save metabolic energy.
So labeling is just our brain's way of zipping a massive computer file so it takes up less space.
That is an excellent analogy, yes. But the consequence of that efficiency is that the moment you name the object, the moment you say red leaf, you usually stop seeing it.
Oh, wow.
You substitute the living, complex reality of that specific leaf with your generalized mental shorthand for it. You stop seeing the subtle degradation of the edges or the specific way the light catches the veins. You just see the concept of a leaf.
We stop seeing the world and start seeing our own filing system.
Precisely. The 2-minute silent awareness practice is a deliberate short-circuiting of predictive coding.
Right.
By actively fighting the urge to name what you are looking at, you force your brain to unzip the file. You force it to stay engaged with the raw sensory input of the present moment.
And that takes effort.
That friction you feel is literally your brain building new neural pathways to sustain attention.
You're unzipping the file and looking at every single line of code,
Exactly.
which requires a tremendous amount of presence.
Well, thank
So why put ourselves through the friction of this entire process? The no photos, the staring at bugs, the fighting our own cognitive filing system.
Right. What's the payoff?
Yeah. Well, the guide concludes with a synthesis of the biology and the philosophy that is genuinely striking.
The closing thought really distills everything down to a single principle. Nature does not rush to become itself.
The tree does not compare. The river does not force. The clouds do not cling, yet everything evolves. It's an incredible summation.
It really is.
We burn through so much of our finite energy trying to control every variable of our lives. We rush to become the next optimized version of ourselves, and we cling to situations or identities that are clearly passing, like weather patterns in the sky.
And the text suggests that deep healing begins when we stopped wanting to control life long enough to recognize that underlying rhythm.
Yeah.
The intelligence of natural patterns offers a neurological baseline of sanity. It visually reminds us that while growth and evolution are inevitable laws of physics, the panic and the blunt force we apply to them are entirely optional.
Panic and force are optional. I love that. So here's our challenge to you today. Take just 2 minutes. You don't need a forest. Find a weed growing through the pavement. Look out your window at a cloud, or just watch the rain hit a puddle. Practice seeing it without an agenda. Do not take a picture of it.
Leave the phone in your pocket.
Yes. And try your hardest to unzip the file. Don't label the color. Don't name the object. Just let your visual cortex rest in the observation of its geometry.
Notice how the fluid dynamics, the fractals, or the vastness physically shift your state of mind. See what that specific pattern reveals about how you might be overcomplicating your own current obstacles.
And as you go about the rest of your week, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on that beautiful line. The tree does not compare. Think about how much mental energy we waste comparing our current season of life to someone else's.
It's exhausting.
It is. If a tree in the dead of winter, totally bare and dormant, doesn't judge itself against a tree blooming in the middle